Please only attempt this process if you are a qualified professional. This information is for educational purposes only. Before you begin, you will require the following tools. You will need adjustable pliers, Allen key, 10 millimeters, a small flathead screwdriver, a medium flathead screwdriver, and a large flathead screwdriver, as well as a small Phillips, a medium Phillips, and a large Phillips, a rubber hammer, a wrench or socket, 13 millimeters, a 20 torque, and a 25 torque. Get your E.sybox Mini 3, position it on your workbench, and make sure you have a couple bins, probably 3, to put your loose parts as you start the disassembly. Step 1. Remove all the plugs from the pump body. The tool be a large flathead screwdriver. Unscrew and remove all the plugs with the help of the large flat screwdriver. Step 1A. Remove all the plugs from the pump body. Tool, flathead screwdriver. Unscrew and remove all the plugs with the help of a large flat screwdriver. As you remove the plugs, place them in a small container for easy access on reassembly. The plugs are located around the pump and are sealed with an O-ring. They should not require very much effort to remove. There are two plugs on the front of the pump and 3 plugs on the bottom of the pump. I also remove the vent covering the air intake to the pump. I would take off the top cover of the E.sybox Mini 3 as well. Step 1B. Remove all the plugs from the pump body. Tool, large flathead screwdriver. Unscrew and remove all the plugs with the help of the large flathead screwdriver. Step 2. Remove the motor access plug. The tool, Allen key, 10 millimeters. To unscrew the motor access plug, use the size 10 Allen key. Step 3. Remove the front cover screws. Tool, a torque screwdriver T20. To remove the front cover, unscrew the 2 screws on the side and the 2 on the bottom. The torque screws can be removed by a hand screwdriver, or if you do have a light-powered screwdriver, not a drill, this is also acceptable. Using a drill will have too much torque and you could strip the screws. After you remove the screws, place them into one of your bins so you organize your parts and can easily access them on reassembly. Once all the screws are removed, the cover should come off by applying a little pressure. Step 3A. Remove the bottom cover screws. The tool, a T20 torque screwdriver. To remove the front cover, unscrew the 2 screws on the sides and the 2 on the bottom. Step 4, remove the front cover. You do not require any tools. Remove the front cover by lifting it carefully and unplugging the display flat cable.
The display cable is removed by pulling outwards on the two locking prongs and pulling out. This can be done with your fingers and should not require much force. It is keyed so it can be put back in the correct orientation.
Step 5, remove screws in the top cover. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver, medium. To remove the top cover, unscrew the 4 screws. Step 6, remove the side covers. No tool is required. To remove the side covers, just pull up sideways and upward.
Place all your parts neatly to the side so you can re-access them on reassembly.
Step 7, remove the screws in the bottom cover. Tool, T20, torque screwdriver. To remove the bottom cover, unscrew the 4 screws. Step 8, remove the screws in the back cover. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver, medium. To remove the screws, unscrew the 4 screws, 2 screws on each side.
These 4 screws actually hold the whole pump assembly to the bottom of the cover. These screws are a little tight. Potentially using a power drill could strip the screws. Please be careful for stripping any screws, as too much torque or too much speed can damage the screws. Now, one of my screws did fall between the pump assembly, and what I will do is, prior to moving to the next step, I will make sure I grab that screw or tip it out and put it into its respective container. Now, with these 4 screws removed, the whole bottom cover will be free, and we can actually start disassembling the pump mechanical components.
Step 9, remove the large O-ring. No tool is required. Pull off the O-ring and keep it separate from the rest due to its particular deformation. Step number 10 and step number 11, remove the sensor and power cables. No tool is required. Unplug the power cable connector by lifting the plastic tooth.
Take the bottom cover and put it next to your work area and keep it organized. Now we can continue working on the internal pump components. Please be sure to organize all the parts as they are removed in order to access them and properly reassemble the pump.
Step 12, turn the connector counterclockwise. No tool is required. Turn the connector counterclockwise until in position. Can be left in position until step 14.
Now I have removed the connector and put it in one of the bins.
Step 13, remove the screw in the VFD. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver, medium. Unscrew the 2 Phillips screws and the 2 Torx screws that mount the VFD onto the pump body.
Now both a Phillips screwdriver and a Torx screwdriver are required for this step. These screws actually mount the VFD to the pump assembly and actually to the motor itself. Inside this white casing is the variable frequency drive for the pump.
Step 14 and step 15.
This is the water sink. So this is where the water cooled happens for the VFD. There is thermal heat paste you will see applied between these components.
Step 14 and step 15, not seen. Check for damage to connector. Tool, flathead screwdriver. Check the connector's condition and if necessary, replace the O-ring. Step 16, remove the screw from the body. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver, medium. Unscrew the screw that mounts the pressure sensor block to the main body. Step 17, remove clammer from body. Tool, flathead screwdriver. Remove the clammer that holds the sensor pressure block to the main body. Step 18, separate the 2 main body blocks. Separate the sensor block from the main body block by pulling them apart. Step 19, not seen. Check the fittings for damage. No tool is required. Check the condition of the fitting between the pressure sensor block and the main block. Step 26, remove the pressure sensor. Tool, adjustable pliers. Remove the pressure sensor by unscrewing it counterclockwise. If required, replace the O-ring.
Please use minimal force when removing the pressure sensor. It may need the use of adjustable pliers, and when you're done, carefully store it.
Step number 20, remove the rubber strap from the pressure tank. No tool is required. Remove, pull and lift the rubber protection which keeps the expansion tank vessel in place. Step number 21, remove the clammer from the pressure tank. Tool, flathead screwdriver, medium. Remove the clammer that holds the expansion tank in place onto the assembly.
Place the camera neatly with the screws.
Step 22, remove the pressure tank. No tool is required. Remove the expansion tank vessel by pulling it out of its fitting.
This is the internal pressure tank inside the pump.
Step number 23, remove the plug to access the non-return valve. Tool, flathead screwdriver, large. To access the non-return valve, unscrew the plug, keep it separate from the other plugs since they have a different thread.
The non-return valve is actually hidden inside the pump body and has actually an access panel on the front of the pump when it's assembled.
Step 24, remove the non-return valve. Tool, adjustable pliers. Remove the non-return valve by pulling it out with the help of the adjustable pliers. Step 25. Check the condition of the non-return valve. Tool, adjustable pliers. Check the condition of the non-return valve, and if required, replace the O-ring. Step number 26, already performed. Remove the pressure sensor. Step number 27, remove the screws in the flow sensor. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver medium. Unscrew the 4 Phillips screws that hold the flow sensor in the sensor assembly.
The flow meter is located inside the flow meter assembly. It is a paddle wheel flow meter, so as the water flows by, the paddle meter will spin, providing a sensor signal to indicate that there is flow. By removing these screws and opening up this enclosure, you can access the paddle wheel and make sure that everything is in proper operation.
Step number 28, remove the flow sensor assembly. Tool, flathead screwdriver large. Remove the flow sensor by prying upwards from the keyed position with a flat screwdriver. Step number 29, not seen. Examine the O-ring on the flow sensor. No tool is required. Examine the flow meter, and if required, replace the O-ring. Remove the flow meter. Step number 29A, remove the clammer. Tool, flathead screwdriver medium. Remove the clammer holding the auxiliary assembly from the main body. Step number 29B, separate the sensor assembly from the main body. No tool is required. Remove the auxiliary assembly from the main pump body. Step number 30, remove the recessed screws. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Unscrew the 4 recessed screws that hold together the 2 hemispheres of the pump body together.
Now, when working with the pump body and disassembled, the bottom of it is a little uneven. So the simplest way is to grab a shop rag and to wedge it under the side so you can get a nice stable working position. If you have a vise with rubber feet on it, that may be suitable, but whenever using a vise, be sure that you do not over tighten it and crack your pump manifold or pump body. Again, when using a power device, like a screwdriver, make sure that it is low torque, even with a torque setting. Do not use a drill, as this will provide too much torque and power and will strip your screws. The best method is just using a hand screwdriver, but if you are comfortable using a powered screwdriver with low torque, that is perfectly acceptable.
Step number 31, remove the pump body. Tool, rubber hammer. Separate the top part of the pump body. You will need the rubber hammer or a flathead screwdriver.
Once all the screws are removed, then you can freely use your rubber mallet. Provide light force and you will remove the pump body.
Step number 32, remove the screws from the pump stack. Tool, T20 Torx screwdriver. Unscrew the 3 Torx screws to uncover the pump stages. Note, these are Phillips in older models. Step number 32A, remove the top cap from the pump impeller stack. Tool, flathead large screwdriver. Remove the top cap from the pump stage assembly.
When using the flathead screwdriver, be sure to use minimal force and to not deform the plastic. Finding the right location to properly pry from is crucial.
Step number 33, remove the top nut from the motor shaft. Tool, 13mm wrench. To undo the top nut, keep the shaft still with a flathead screwdriver from the bottom and unscrew the top nut with a wrench, or vice versa. Number 33A, use a 13mm wrench or socket at the top. Tool, 13mm wrench. To undo the top nut, keep the shaft with the flathead screwdriver from the bottom and unscrew the top nut with a wrench. Number 33B, use a large flathead screwdriver at the bottom. Tool, flathead screwdriver. To undo the top nut, keep the shaft with a flathead screwdriver from the bottom and unscrew the top nut with a wrench, or vice versa.
Once you remove the nut off the top and the washer, pump stages will easily slide off.
34, remove the pump stack from the motor shaft. Tool, flathead screwdriver, small. Use 1 or 2 flathead screwdrivers to lift the stages and remove them one by one. Lift from the diffuser edges, not from the impellers. Be careful not to damage the plastic.
The impellers are the components inside the stack. You should be prying on the stack, not the impellers.
Step number 35, remove the washer from the motor shaft. Tool, flathead screwdriver. Remove the washer from the pump stage assembly. Step number 36, remove the mechanical seal from the motor shaft assembly. Tool required is a flathead screwdriver, large. Remove the mechanical seal from the pump stage assembly, prying gently on the seal. Step number 37, remove the corner screws. Tool, T20 Torx screwdriver. Unscrew the 4 screws at the corner, holding the seal disc to the motor body. Continuation of step 37, remove the plastic bands. Tool, flathead screwdriver, large. Remove the 2 plastic bands, securing the seal disc to the motor body.
The 2 plastic bands mesh over top of one another. They can be a little tricky to remove once the screws have been taken out. Do not use too much force to deform the plastic. And once you've unloosened one side, you can pull them apart and unloosen the other side. They do lock together in a crisscross fashion. One side sits over and the other side sits under.
Step 38, extract the seal disc. Tool, flathead screwdriver large. Extract the seal disc with the help of 2 flathead screwdrivers.
Now, if you are dismantling the pump on your own, sometimes it is difficult to get 2 screwdrivers in there. It just depends on how you have the pump positioned on your workbench. If possible, get 2 screwdrivers and pry from each side at the same time. Using a shop rag to support the pump, this should be possible with one person. Once you have got it slightly pried, you could go back and forth from side to side, slowly loosening the seal disc from the pump body. The seal disc allows the motor to be cooled, as well as providing a location for the mechanical seal to seal the shaft into the motor.
Step 39, check the shaft, seals, and O-rings. No tool is required. Check the shaft for corrosion or other problems. Check the seal disc O-ring, and if required, replace. Step 40, remove the screws in the motor casing. Tool, T20 Torx screwdriver, size 20. Use a T20 Torx screwdriver to remove the 4 screws. Then, with the help of 2 flat screwdrivers, separate the motor body from the motor casing. Step 40A, remove the motor casing. Tool, flathead screwdriver, large. Use the T20 Torx screwdriver to remove the 4 screws. Then with the help of 2 flat screwdrivers, separate the motor body from the motor casing.
Now, sometimes I find it a little easier to use a single screwdriver and pry around the casing from a little bit from one spot and a little bit from the other. I also try to use the rounded spots of the screwdriver, like the screwdriver shaft itself, to do prying. This way, there's a lot less chance of damaging any of the components.
Step 41, examine the casing, O-rings, and motor shaft for damage. Tool, flathead screwdriver, large. Check the motor casing, the O-rings, and the lower part of the motor shaft for damage or corrosion. Reassembly. Step number 1, reinstall the screws in the motor body. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Reinstall the motor screws by fastening its 4 torque screws. To aid in assembly, lubricate all O-rings and gaskets.
Be sure to always be using silicone when reassembling the E.sybox pump or any pumps with O-rings. The silicone will provide the necessary lubricant for the O-rings to slip into place properly without pinching them. Failure to use the silicone lubricant can result in pinched O-rings, unseated O-rings, and possibly having to rebuild aspects of the pump once a leak is found. Now typically this step I'll start by using my own force to get the body positioned on the motor, and once it's positioned and in line, then I will use the screws to pull it finally into place and provide the last bit of tightening. You know, it may be helpful to pull out all the screws that you're needing and position them so you're putting the right screws into the right location. By screwing in a crisscross fashion and slowly, the screws can actually pull the pump body down onto the O-rings for proper placement. Be sure not to tighten one side at a time and to slowly go around in a crisscross fashion so things are tightened evenly and there's an even distribution as the assembly occurs. Now once you put on one screw and tightened it slightly, put on the screw directly opposite of it and slightly tighten it. And then the screw next to and then finally the last screw would be opposite of your previous screw. Now we will retighten all the screws in the same pattern we installed them. What I do recommend is I recommend the final tightening done by your hand. This is again using a low torque powered screwdriver. You may not get the torque and power needed to fully seat any of the components. So final tightening should be done by hand. And again, using a drill has way too much power and you risk damaging the pump parts and screws.
Step number 2, reseat the seal disc. No tool required. Install the seal disc over the pump body.
Now the seal disc has actually got 2 seals on it. One of the seals is around the motor, and that's to seal the seal disc to the motor. The other is the O-ring on the actual seal disc itself, and that's to seal the seal disc to the pump body. So there's actually 2 O-rings here that we're trying to ensure are properly positioned and placed.
Step number 3, replace the plastic bands. Secure the plastic bands around the seal disc and the pump body.
Now you may not be able to push down on the seal disc and get it to seat over the O-rings. I provide a little force and get it so it's started and in position. And then by adding the plastic bands and positioning them back into the pump, what we can do now is use the screws to pull the seal disc down into place.
Step 4, fasten the corner screws. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Insert and fasten the 4 corner screws holding the seal disc to the pump body.
Now finally tighten the screws by hand to ensure they're fully tightened and that the seal disc has been fully pulled into position for a complete seal.
Step 5, insert the mechanical seal on the motor shaft. No tool is required. Insert and push down on the mechanical seal for complete contact with the motor shaft.
Now the mechanical seal ensures no water actually gets into the motor.
Step 6, insert the washer on the motor shaft. Insert the washer onto the motor shaft. Step number 7, insert the first pump stage. Insert the first pump stage on the motor shaft, matching the keyed positioning markers.
Now these components are called the diffusers.
Step number 8, insert the first impeller. No tool required. Insert the impeller on the motor shaft above the first stage diffuser. Step 8A, repeat for the other stages. Repeat the remaining pump stages. 3 stages for E.sybox Mini 3 and 2 stages for the older models. Step number 9, install the top nut and washer. Place the washer and the top nut at the top of the pump stage assembly. Step number 10, fasten the top nut. Tool, 13 millimeter wrench. Fasten the top nut with the wrench, keeping the shaft locked with a flathead screwdriver from the bottom at the same time.
Now both a flathead screwdriver and the 13 millimeter wrench are required. The 13 millimeter wrench will be used to attach or tighten the nut. And the flathead screwdriver is actually holding the motor shaft on the bottom side of the motor so it does not spin as you tighten the nut.
Step number 11, install the top cap onto the pump stack. Place the top cover of the pump stage assembly, ensuring it is correctly orientated. Step number 12, not seen. Check the O-ring. Check the O-ring at the top of the pump stage assembly, and if required, replace it. Step number 13, screw in the screws holding the pump stack. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Screw the 3 torque screws into the pump stack. Phillips screws on older models.
These 3 screws will hold the pump stack into place, but allow the impellers to freely spin inside the stack when the motor rotates.
Step number 14, seat the pump body over the pump stages. Place the pump body so that the keyed tab is aligned to the notch on the seal disc and push down firmly.
Now the pump body is going to be having 2 washers as well. There's one washer sealing the pump body to itself, and then the other one at the top sealing the impeller assembly to the bottom of the pump body.
Step number 15, fasten the recessed screws. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Fasten the 4 recessed torque screws in the pump body.
Now the pump body is quite difficult to push over the O-rings, so I use a little force to get it positioned, and then I really rely on the screws to pull the pump body into place. It's very crucial that this step be done with caution because the 2 O-rings we're trying to seal can be very tricky if it's not pulled together in a very smooth, consistent manner. Please make sure everything has silicone lubricant on it, and you take your time pulling this pump body down over other half of the pump body. Because this requires a little extra force, we typically do this stage by hand and use our hand to tighten the screw. And as soon as we start to see the pump body slide down over the O-ring, we move on to the next screw. The slower and the more steady you take this stage, the more successful you'll be in creating a complete seal on both the O-rings. Do not rush this step. Now once I've got everything started with screwdrivers, I do continue with my power screwdriver to allow for a slightly quicker assembly. Be very hesitant to use a power screwdriver unless you've done this before. If things are pulled down unequally or too fast on one side, you'll almost ensure that the seal is broken. So please take your time and slowly pull the pump bodies together to ensure a full watertight seal.
Step 16. Fasten the screws in a crisscross fashion. Tool T20 torque screwdriver. For a tight and balanced fastening, advance the 4 screws slowly, one at a time, following a crisscross pattern. Note, optimal torque range is between 2.7 and 3.1 Newton meters.
By fastening in a crisscross pattern, we ensure that the pump bodies come together in a uniform manner and the O-rings properly seal and seat in position.
Step number 17. Tighten until the parts shown touch. No tool needed. Tighten the screws until the 2 parts are touching at the position indicated.
Tighten the screws until we get the body touching properly.
Step number 18. Insert the non-return valve and fasten the plug. Insert the non-return valve and screw plug. Remember, it's different from the external plugs.
Now the non-return valve sits in the secondary assembly that has the water-cooled heatsink for the VFD. The non-return valve gets pushed into place. You'll feel it click in.
Step number 18A. Insert the non-return valve and fasten the plug. Tool Flathead screwdriver, large. Insert the non-return valve and screw plug. Remember, it's different from the external plugs. Step 19, insert the flow meter. No tool required. Insert the flow meter into the flow sensor assembly. Remember to place the paper washer, ensuring the flow meter spins freely before sealing. When inserting the flow meter, make sure the metal piece with the white dot is facing upwards. Step number 20, install the flow meter. No tool required. Insert the flow sensor above the flow meter and orientate the keyed notch to the correct position. Make sure that the O-ring is properly lubricated with silicone lubricant, and by supplying small downward force, this flow meter should just snap into place quite nicely. Ensure the key notch matches the flow meter and the body. Step number 21, fasten the screws that mount the flow sensor. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver, medium. Fasten the 6 Phillips screws into the flow sensor. Even with a flow sensor like this, we will do slight crisscrossing the best we can, so we're not over tightening one side of the flow meter, and we provide even distribution. Step number 22, install the pressure sensor clockwise. Tool, adjustable pliers. Install the pressure sensor into the assembly. Use adjustable pliers to fasten it securely. Use the silicone lubricant to make sure the O-rings are properly lubricant. Screw in the pressure sensor by hand, and then if need be, use your final 1/8 turn with adjustable pliers. Step number 23, place the pressure tank into its fitting. No tool required. Insert the pressure tank into its fitting on the assembly. Again, ensure you're using silicone lubricant to lubricate the O-ring, and this will ensure a proper seal and easy installation. Apply force directly forward, and the pressure canister will slide directly into its fitting. Step number 25, install the clammer to secure the pressure tank. Tool, adjustable pliers. Install the clammer to secure the pressure tank on the assembly. May need a rubber hammer on step 26, not seen. Step number 24, install the rubber strap on the pressure tank. No tool required. Install the rubber strap around the pressure tank to secure it in place. Step number 27, connect the sensor block to the pump body. No tool required. Reconnect the sensor pressure assembly to the main pump body.
Be sure to use the silicone lubricant on all gas or O-rings. Apply firm pressure and it will slide directly into its connector, and then use the clammer to secure it in place.
Step number 29, install the clammers to secure the assembly. Tool, adjustable pliers. Multiple clammers secure the assemblies together. Use adjustable pliers to manipulate the clammers.
By squeezing on the clammer, you can get the right position, and then using your finger, you can just push it down into place. If you're having difficulty getting the clammer in, it could be because the fitting was pushed in too far or not enough. Ensure that the fitting is properly inserted and then reattempt installing the clammer.
Step number 28, fasten the screw in the pump body. Tool, Phillips head screwdriver. Fasten the screw in the pump body to secure the assemblies together.
Now the clammers will create a watertight connection, but they're not designed for a structural connection. So once the bodies are reattached with the clammers, be sure to fasten the screw to provide a structural connection between the pump bodies.
Step number 30, place the pump upper gasket. No tool required. Seat the pump's upper gasket and replace if required. Step 31, position the main board and VFD. No tool required. Position the main board and variable frequency drive correctly. Help alignment with the screws and the pump body gasket. Apply thermal paste to the heatsink before installing. Step number 32, fasten the screws in the main board and the VFD. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Fasten the 2 torque screws and the 2 Phillips screws mounting the main board and the VFD to the pump body.
The 2 torque screws actually structurally connect the main board and VFD to the pump body. The 2 smaller Phillips screws actually provide grounding from the circuit board to the motor assembly.
Step number 33, place the connector through the main board. No tool required. Place the connector back in position through the main board and push down until it clicks. Step number 34, turn the connector 90 degrees. Turn the connector 90 degrees clockwise until it is secure. Step number 35, insert the power cable connector. No tool required. Position the main board in VFD correctly. Help alignment with the screws and pump body's gasket. Apply thermal paste to the heatsink before installing. Step number 36, position the power cable correctly. Position the power cable correctly through the body.
The power cable should clip to the bottom side of the pump, and it should run along the bottom of the pump and then pass through the sidewall with the rubber grommet.
Step number 36A, insert the power cable connector. Position the power cable correctly through the body.
The power cable rubber grommet should snap in to the body of the casing of the pump, the bottom casing, and run underneath the connector and then up into the circuit board.
Step number 37, fasten the screws on the back cover. Tool, Phillips screwdriver, medium. Place the whole inside block on the back cover and secure it by fastening 4 Phillips screws.
These 4 screws actually hold the whole pump and circuit board to the backing plate of the pump. If you lose a screw while setting it up, you should be able to spin and tip the pump body and pour the screw out that got lost. Now, when using a low torque battery powered screwdriver, it may require using a hand screwdriver to actually fully tighten the screws into place, as it may require some torque and a little force to properly get the screws seated. Take your time with this step to ensure none of the screws are stripped. Ensure the screws are fully tightened down and properly securing the pump to the pump base. This will ensure that there is no rattling or vibration, and also ensuring that the rest of the cover properly attaches seamlessly.
Step number 38, not seen, Check the cable connectors for issues. Check the cable connectors for issues like dirt, oxidation, moisture, etc. before reconnecting the components. Step number 40, plug in the flow and pressure sensor cables. No tool required. Plug the pressure sensor and flow cables. Pressure sensor cable is gray, flow sensor cable is black.
Ensure the flow sensor cable and pressure sensor cable are properly positioned into the circuit board. The flow cable is black and the pressure sensor cable is gray.
Step number 39, plug in the flat display cable. No tool required. Plug in the flat display cable.
The flat display cable is keyed, so it will slide in if you follow the notches on the connector. Take your time and slide this in carefully.
Step number 41, secure the cables with the deformed O-ring. Put back the specific O-ring, do not use other O-rings of the pump, and make sure it is positioned correctly. Keep all cables secured inside.
The deformed O-ring is designed to keep all the cables inside so nothing gets pinched during reassembly.
Step number 42, place the bottom cover. Place the bottom cover carefully and align it with the main block. Step number 43, fasten the screws in the bottom cover. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Fasten the 4 torque screws in the bottom cover to secure the cover in place.
The screws holding the cover in place do not require tremendous torque or power. A power-operated screwdriver, not a drill, works quite well. Using a drill can damage the pump parts or strip the screws. With the 4 screws screwed back in, the bottom cover is fully attached.
Step number 44, insert the side covers. Insert the side covers, insert the side covers, first pushing downwards and then sideways. Pay attention to the power cable position.
The power cable is notched out in the side cover and should be properly positioned so the power cable is secure.
Step number 45, place the top cover. No tool required. Place the top cover of the pump.
The top cover of the pump will slide over the main circuit board VFD and mesh with the side covers.
Step number 46, fasten the screws in the top cover. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. Fasten the 4 torque screws in the top cover to secure it to the pump body. Step number 47, plug in the flat display cable. No tool required. Plug in the flat display cable to the display port connector on the lower side of the front cover. Step number 48, place the front cover. No tool required. Position the front cover in place over the rest of the pump. Step number 49, fasten the screws in the side cover. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. To secure the front cover, fasten the 2 screws in the side cover and 4 screws in the bottom cover. Step 49A, fasten the screws in the bottom cover. Tool, T20 torque screwdriver. To secure the front screws, fasten the 2 screws in the side cover and the 4 screws in the bottom cover. Step number 51, install the motor access plug. Tool, Allen key, 10 millimeters. Fasten the motor access plug by using the Allen key. Step 51A, install the priming plug port. Tool, flathead screwdriver large. Fasten the plug for priming port with the help of a large flathead screwdriver. Step number 50, fasten all inlet and outlet plugs. Tool, flathead screwdriver large. Fasten all inlet and outlet plugs with the help of a large flathead screwdriver.
You can also clip on any of the vent covers that were removed during disassembly. There's 2 on the back and 1 on the bottom. These protect any debris from being sucked into the pump for cooling. All the plugs have O-rings to seal them in place, so do not over tighten, just hand tighten, and it will create a complete seal. The E.sybox now is fully reassembled and ready for operation. Please ensure you test the pump prior to putting back into the field.
Awesome. Oh, we weren't recording. No, I'm just joking.